Okay, good morning everyone. Good Chodesh. We're starting a new siman today, siman Shin Tes Vov 315, and Shin Yud Daled was about Boine, Binyan and Steer, and now we're doing Shin Tes Vov, which deals with Oyhel, which also has a lot of practical application and relevance. So says the Mechaber, Shin Tes Vov Sif Aleph. Also lasses Oyhel b'Shabbos. You're not allowed to make an Oyhel, a tent, let's say, on Shabbos v'Yontif. Afidu Ara, even if it's a temporary structure. For dafka gag, an oyel is dafka defined when there is a gag, when there is a roof, aval mechitzas, but just to put mechitzas in place, muta, that's allowed. Ve'in mechitza asur elim keinasis lahatzis sukkah or lahatzir tiltul. And when is a mechitza a problem? When it's a halachic mechitza, i.e. it's come to be matir sukkah. For example, as Mishmar is going to explain, you've got two walls, you need a third wall, or tiltul, or to allow you to carry, or something like that. But if a mechitza is there just for privacy, for tznius reasons, that's actually permitted, because that's not a halachic mechitza. And therefore you're allowed to put a villa in some sort of curtain up in front of an opening, because that's for sneers ba'alma. And so too, putting a parochis in front of the Aron HaKodesh, you're not making an oyhel there, and you're not making a gag. So long as you don't make a gag, that's okay. So too, you're allowed to put up a mechitza in front of the sun, like a sunscreen, to protect you from the sun or from the cold, or to prevent candles going out. But you can't put up a mechitza in front of light if there is too much light in the room. So too, if you want to put them in front of Sfarim, because you need to last you need to go to the bathroom, unless the oyhel was already open at tefach before Shabbos, then she'oz mutar lohisif aleh b'Shabbos, because to extend the oyhel, being moisif al oyhel arai, that is permitted. Okay, so just to summarize what we said, you're not allowed to make an oyhel on Shabbos, but dafka where there is a gag, and a mechitza is allowed so long as it's not a halachic wall. If it's a halachic wall, then you're going to have a problem, as we'll see. Okay, let's do the Mishnah Berurah, we'll see more detail. Also last is ohel. Says the Mishnah Berurah Sif Kotan Aleph, Da'isa ohel keva, if someone makes a fixed ohel, Kagoin sheparis machatzeles sadin, and he puts out some sort of sheet or something like that, and he does it in a way that's going to last, after ein zeh binyan mamish, even though it's not proper construction, it's not proper binyan, nevertheless, Chaim mishum boine. Why? Ta'asiyas oyel u'tel toledes boine. Because an oyel, making an oyel, is a tolda of boine. V'hasoisrei, and if you demolish it, you take it away. Chaim mishum soisa, taking away the oyel, dismantling it, is a problem of soisa. For gozra al oyel arai mishum oyel keva, and Chazal made a prohibition against oyel arai because of the oyel keva. V'chein al stiras oyel arai mishum stiras oyel keva. So that's a quote from the Rambam. In the details of this will emerge. V'dafka gag. So it's a problem. An oyel is a problem when there is a roof. Says the Mishnah Berurah Sif Kotan Beis. V'af she'ein mechitzas tachtov. And even if there are no walls underneath it. For example, to spread a sheet or something, a cover on four poles, even though you haven't got mechitzas coming down, that would be problematic, because you've got a roof and you've got mechitzas, and that would be problematic. But if some mechitzas are muta, says the Mishnah Berurah Gimel, to ikka oyel hu agag, because the ikka oyel is the roof, is not the mechitzas. Shema hilalov v'lochein gozra mishum oyel keva, and therefore Chazal made a gezerah of oyel arai als oyel keva when there is a roof dafka. Masha'enkin mechitzas arai lechud lo nechshav ka'el klal, but just mechitzas alone, we're not worried about that. But if the mechitza is a halachic mechitza, for example, lahatzir sukkah, then it's a problem. Says Mishnah Berurah Dalet, Kagain, for example, shahoy Orach shnei defonos. You only had two walls. V'asa mechitza ara l'dofen shlishi, and you want to construct a third wall to facilitate it being a good sukkah. K'mvur l'kam and simin tofreish lamed, all the halachas of sukkah. Da'oz choshiv hach mechitza kabinyan. Then this third wall now becomes a problem of binyan. Ta'al yoda niskasha sukkah, because through it, you are now making the sukkah kosher. So too, if this mechitza enables you to carry, therefore it's considered binyan. So in short, mechitzas are okay, but if there are mechitza lahatze and mechitza halachic wool, then you've got a problem. But if it's l'snias ba'alma, so he says, for example, kagoin lahafsik ben anoshim lanoshim kashem in hadrosha, that's l'snias ba'alma. Now that's fascinating. So it comes out, let's say you've got a drosha, and you want to put up a mechitza. So you've got to understand when you're allowed to do it, when you're not allowed to do it. So the rule is, if it's a halachic wool, you can't. If it's l'snias ba'alma, you can. So what is a mechitza if there are men and women there? Is it halachic or is it l'snias ba'alma? So the example the Mishnah Berurah gives, if it's lahafsik ben anoshim lanoshim k'shem in hadrosha, that's l'snias. Halachically is not really required. You can have men and women sitting in the same hall or something. You don't really need it halachically, and therefore it's considered l'snias. If you look at footnote 9, he says, Afal pina, what's the lomdas? Now you do have to separate. For example, in shul, you do have to separate men and women. Theirs was Anoshim, and there's Noshim is on the other side. So what's the story? So if you look at footnote 9, he says, "Fa'afal pi sha'achiyuv lahavdil ben Anoshim lanoshim al dei mechitzu min ha'Torah, k'mei shekotzav b'shal shuvah zikros Moshe bia ha'urchus Shabbos shemekom makom in nechshavas mechitza ha'materes." It's not a mechitza materes, i.e., shekein lahavdil ben Anoshim lanoshim ein tzorech mechitza sheish lo dinei mechitza eladai b'chol mechitza ha'geremes havdol shel tznius. Because min ha'Torah, what you really need is a division. So if you've got a small mechitza, a very small, or some sort of, any form of division separating the men and the women, that's enough. So for example, you're in a Sheva Brachas and you want to make a minyan for Mariv, and if the women stand, a bit further away, the men at the front of the place, and there's some, that's okay. And therefore, you don't really need a mechitza hamateres over there. So if you wanted to put a mechitza there for whatever reason, that would be okay for Shabbos because it's not a mechitza halachic, it's not a mechitza hamateres, it's just the tznias ba'alma. That's the kavon of this Mishnah Berurah. Okay, let's carry on. Let's try and finish off this sif. Shekovu Hasham. It's there hanging permanently. Still, it would be considered the mechitza arai, because it blows around with a regular wind. And it doesn't stop people passing through. But to fix this mechitza, top and bottom, and on the side, fixing the mechitza, top, bottom, and sides, so it doesn't blow in the wind, that's a problem. The simas kevahu, that's like a fixture, and therefore that's a problem. And so too, if it's a letznias ba'alma, if it's a pure paroches, that would be allowed. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Sifkot and Zayin, zepshita d'shari, that's certainly allowed. Just hanging a villa in a curtain, sheyesh belav hochidelis l'Orach Kodesh. For example, putting a paroches in front of the Orach Kodesh, that's not a problem at all because you've got the delis there, and this is just decorative. Imkein ha-paroches ein l'toli rak letznias ba'alma, it's just a tznias thing you have in front of the Orach Kodesh. And there are others who take it further, even if there is no door on the Orach Kodesh, come a villain etzel ha Pesach. For example, you've got a curtain hanging down over an opening or something. Again, they allow it. You want to hang up some decorative curtains for beauty, that's fine. Even if you fix it that it's not going to blow around too much, that's allowed. They're just decorative and they're not really there for anything else. This is going on. To do it in front of, to protect you from the sun or the wind or something like that. Poshet, the kol zeh mechitzas arai. All of these things are mechitzas arai. They've got no gag, no roof, and therefore it's okay. Mechitzas keva kadesh kain osa. But to do it with any permanence is a problem. Now, if, however, you're doing it, it's a halachic mechitza because you're doing it in front of a light in a bedroom, so that to enable tashmish hamita. Says the Mishnah Berurah Sifkot and Yud, given the osel shamish b'fnei ur haner or isfarim, if there are sfarim in the room or if there is light, then you've got a halachic problem. Mikri mechitza materes, putting a mechitza in front of it is therefore a mechitza materes, and therefore you've got a problem. Because of Mogan Avram, da'anu dafke im oisem mechitza gevei asar tvachim. This is only a problem if the mechitza is 10 tfachim high, and therefore it's a halachic mechitza. V'haner gevei v'neris tamal, and the light will sort of go over the mechitza. The mapel b'talos v'mashamish, then you've got a halachic mechitza there, and even though there may be light in the room because you're not closing the light. There may be a light on, but there's a lamp there, and you want to put a mechitza next to it, but there is still light in the room. Then your mapil b'talos meshamish, you can put the sheet over your head, and therefore it's okay. Because the mashma b'siman reish mem sif yud aleph b'hago v'shlo mashma. The apev zeh yesh li zoy ma'oy. The shlo is more machmir with this. You should be careful with that. Vayim b'dirab sham. Okay. The kimesh aner nearest, because at the end of the day light is there. And kein hahetza b'zeh urak mishum diyesh al zeh al mam ashem mechitza shegva asor. The whole heta of putting the mechitza is because you've got a halachic mechitza there. And therefore, halachically, it's as if the light is in a different room. And therefore, you've got to make sure that the wind, the mechitza doesn't blow away, blow around. Otherwise, it hasn't got a shem mechitza. Because in that situation, it's a halachic rule, and that is a problem. It's called a mechitza materes. But if the mechitza, you're just putting a lamp, you're putting a cover over the lamp, there, you don't even need the mechitza to be 10 because you're just covering the lamp or the light. Now, that would be okay on Shabbos. Because it's not a din of mechitza materes, you're just covering the light. If you're putting a cover over the lamp, even though it may be 10 tefachim high, that's not a problem. It's considered a cover for the lamp and not a mechitza materes. So too, if you need, I remember once hearing a friend of mine, his grandmother's in-law came to stay, and she moved into the dining room downstairs, and she was an older lady, and she needed a commode in the bathroom, and he had to cover up the sforim in his dining room because of exactly this halacha. He needs to make a mechitza before Shabbos, b'fnei tzvar. Now that's a halachic mechitza, so therefore you can't make that mechitza on Shabbos. If you got a mechitza so that would cover the tzvar, so if it just covers the tzvarim, then again it's a kisu ba'alman, it's not a mechitza materes, and that would be allowed to do on Shabbos. And that would be okay. If you're going to do this mechitza on Shabbos, it's better to make sure there is another cover on the sfarim. Because then the sfarim will be considered as a kli b'toch kli, which is therefore allowed to do stracha before it. At the end of the day, if you got one cover, there are those who allow. Chashiva mechitza materes v'osel asoso is still called mechitza materes. Mikom okom near the b'shas hatchak yesh lismech al dvarav. Okay, v'al kol ponim lekula alma mutar lachasas hasfarim b'kisu b'alma. If it's merely covering the sfarim, that would be okay. V'hanu kli b'toich kli lahatzi hatashmish tzeh lo have a mechitza klal. Because that's not really, it's just a cover, it's not really a mechitza. Okay, shahoy mebayid yom tefach. And we said more that if it was open a tefach before Shabbos, you can be moisif. V'lochein paravan sha'imid mefumash tefach me'er Shabbos. He says the bottom mechitza miskapeles, like a folding cover, a folding door. That's allowed to open it up on Shabbos. Mutar lefoshte kulei avlim hoya mekupel, if it was folded totally. Afal pisha kulei harba yosem tefach, even though that fold, even though it was all folded, like closed, was more than a tefach, lo mahani, that doesn't help you. Shari lo nas is ebish fil mechitza. We'll come to this more. So just to summarize, what we said over here is that oyel is a tolda of binyan, and you can't therefore make or break a permanent oyel. There is a gezeira of oyel aray als oyel keva, but that's only when there's a gag. If there's no gag and it's a mechitza b'alma, then it's okay. However, it's a mechitza materes, then you've got a problem. To do it all before Shabbos, of course, is okay. What is mechitza materes, which is for a sukkah or for something where it's a halachic need for it. But if it's l'sniyas b'alma, then it would be okay. Say that more details to follow in Misa Hashem.